To everybody who's dialing into this webinar, welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Dorianne Coventry. I work for a company called Terra Protein Equity Partners. We provide corporate advice and raise capital for ag and ag tech companies globally. And we're currently doing some work with the University of New England's Smart Region Incubator, which is an incubator for startups. The work we're doing for them is specializing in ag tech startups and scale-ups in the New England Northwest. If you're not familiar with the Smart Region Incubator or the SRI, it's a wonderful resource if you're a business looking to grow and something worth looking into. Today we are joined by Jason Hardy and Chris Sinclair from Digital Village.
Thank you for having us.
Jason, raise your hand first.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Okay, Chris.
How are we? The other person in there.
And today, the topic today is navigating the jungle of technology. So this session is really built to help you and your businesses better engage with your customers, improve your growth, build better physical and digital projects. And we're also going to discuss some early marketing strategies and lean product development that will allow you to get to market faster and increase your growth. The session today is meant to be interactive. You'll see some templates and canvases and PDFs that will come up to download. We'd really encourage you to participate as much as you can so that you can get as much value as possible out of this session. We're very lucky to have Jason and Chris here, and you will understand when I read you a little bit about their biographies. So Jason is the founder and CEO of Digital Technology. His experience is, he's an experienced digital delivery and product executive. He's been working with startups and scale-ups for the last 10 years, testing new market propositions through experimentation and the development of web and mobile products. At Digital Village, his responsibilities are planning and strategy of product development, building teams, managing the project and delivery of business outcomes. So Jason co-founded Digital Village 4 years ago to bring a network of technologists and digital practitioners together to work with businesses to solve business technology problems. One thing that Jason and I were speaking about previously, which really impressed me, was he also wants to improve the system for outsourcing some of this contract work, which can be quite confusing and overwhelming. And we find with some of the startups that we work with, people don't always get what they think they're going to get. So Jason's trying to solve that market problem with his business as well, which is very appealing. Chris and
I think she summarizes the value proposition for digital better than we do.
There you go.
Go back to the drawing.
So Chris is in experience design and strategy at Digital Village. He's responsible for working with startups and organizations to develop products and go-to-market strategies utilizing agile and design sprint methodologies with a core focus on customer and success metrics. These processes are utilized to get businesses the best result in the fastest possible time without sacrificing quality or value. So I'm really excited to hear from Jason and Chris. And I think with that, guys, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. Thanks for the intro. Hello, everyone. Great to be with you here today. We probably don't really need to introduce ourselves anymore. I was going to do that. But before we do get started, it would be nice to actually have an understanding of who else is in the room. We can't actually see anyone, can we?
No, but I can allow to talk. So I've got, maybe I should just go down the list of attendees here. And
well, even better because we're going to slightly mold the messaging around who's in the room, depending on what business we have here. So I've actually got just a basic form. I might just throw that in the chat. So just to get a bit of an idea of who's here so we can provide the most value to you. Where is the chat here?
If you go to the other, bring up the whole window.
In the tab.
While you're doing that, just for the people who are dialing in, there is a raise hand icon. If you scroll to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you have the ability to raise your hand during the discussion. Please feel free to do that if you have any questions. There's also the chat. If you've never used Zoom before,
You want to try doing it
while getting your chat
deeper
open,
right there.
so that you can put comments in there. So I've just popped into chat something. If you just
Okay, coming now.
Yep.
It'll just take a couple of minutes to fill out. It's just asking some basic questions. It's totally anonymous, and we don't, it's not about that. It's just for us to understand the types of businesses, types of products, specific industries, so then we can mold examples to that. So please take a moment to do that.
Jason, I've just noticed that that's only gone to the panelists. If you want to just change your to box to all panelists and attendees.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yep.
So we'll keep, while you're doing that, so as Dorian's also already outlined, so what we're going to be exploring today is how to define your target customer and create a value proposition they will love and pay for. And then we're going to dig into how to successfully build products. And that relates to both digital or technology products and physical products as well. So just a little bit on that as well, before we do get started, while you're filling that out, if you're familiar with the lean startup, that's something that I have been very passionate about for a long time. And much of this session is going to be following that methodology. And that's kind of the core message of the webinar today, and how to apply that. I was fortunate enough to be given the Lean Startup book by Eric Ries back in 2014 or 15 or something. And it really has molded the way that I've approached solving technology problems and building products, but also the way that we run business as a whole. So all of our business processes and everything, and the way that we build products, our whole methodology is based around this Lean Startup methodology. So I did have, actually might just, we'll wait to see who's familiar with it.
I've just tried doing this, and I'm finding I'm getting a message saying that I need permission. I'm not sure if others are.
Okay, scrap that. Don't worry about it. So can we just throw in the put a hand up of who's familiar with the Lean Startup? Actually, even better, there's a basic poll there. Dorian, are you able to publish a poll?
Trying.
Okay.
I am trying to get back.
Here we go. Launch polling.
That's the BMC, the other one.
Quick poll.
Yep.
That one. Lean Startup.
Yep. So just maybe this one, there's just a poll that's popped up in your Zoom, just on a scale of 1 to 10, just so we can understand, because I don't want to like bang on about it, the basics of it if you're already familiar with it. Okay, cool. So it's a bit of a mixture. So that's fine. We'll get to that in a little bit later.
Quick share of the results if you want to see it.
Yeah, can everyone see that though? I think everyone can see that. We'll get to talking a little bit about that a little bit later. Okay, but let's jump in. So picture this, right? So you have been thrown into a jungle. And so you're starting a business, you're going out to build a product, and technology is essentially always going to be a core component of delivery of business services, the management of business, and also the growth of the business. So the technology, the topic of this is navigating the jungle of technology. And that is the case because it really is a jungle. And if you think about all of the different choices you need to make as a product owner or as a business owner around technology selection, not just for the business, but around building software or building anything else for that matter, it's hugely vast and intricate. And how do you know you're making the right decisions or not? It's very complicated and very frustrating process. But you're not alone. It's a seriously crowded market. Here's an example of a real technology jungle, specifically for the marketing technology industry, if you like. So if you're looking to carry out any marketing in your business, here are your options. And these are obviously different, on different scales, different tools and different, platforms that you can use for your marketing your business. And so this is, this is essentially an example of a technology jungle. And then you think about all of the other options around the business as well, like operations, which ERP system you're going to choose. If you think about data management, analytics, and the tool, any of these types of business functions has this kind of array of technology options. So the question is, how do you navigate the jungle of technology?
Can you imagine having to pick something out of all of that?
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's just marketing. I mean, so essentially what you need to navigate through the jungle of technology is a map and, firstly, an idea of where you want to get to. So a clear view of where you're going and what your destination is. And so it's a clear idea about what success looks like. So you know where you're wanting to go, and then you need a map of how to get there. So we're going to be talking about both of those things today. But first, let's take a look at success and setting the vision of success. Chris.
Awesome. So as Jace mentioned, what we need to think about is where do you start? What is that starting point for either thinking about your marketing strategies, for building out your, addressing any of the goals and needs of within the business? And as I was stated before, one of my views I like to take is that everything should start with the customer. The customer is at the core of every decision and strategy that you make. And I'll constantly reiterate this, so you might get annoyed with me saying that over and over again, but it's a really crucial thing to drive through. So a place that we like to start is defining your, as it's written here, your North Star. So what is a North Star? The idea of the North Star originated in Silicon Valley, as a lot of modern thinking does these days when it comes to tech and strategy work. But it differs greatly from the traditional goal setting that you might do in an organization. So rather than where goals are like, there might be KPI driven, maybe like talk about increasing sales or increasing numbers in your business. The point of the North Star is to focus on your product or your core sales item and the value that it provides to your customer. Now, right up front, I want to make sure everyone is aware that when I talk about customer, it can be both a business, so it could be a B2B, or it can also be the customer that you're selling products to in a shopping, if you're buying jewelry and all that type of stuff. It stretches across the entire realm. And the product can be the actual physical item that you're selling, or it can be your services, your consulting, whatever it is that your business is. Your product is your organization, and the customer is the thing that you are partnering or selling to. So an example of that is driving more sales is, as I mentioned before, it's not a North Star. That is a KPI. That is a thing like increasing teams, as I mentioned before. That's not a North Star. An example of a good North Star is sort of you're improving customer retention and satisfaction, because there you're talking about your product, the opportunities around your product, and you're also then relating it to a customer need. So a couple of really black and white examples here. I wanted to pick out some really big organizations just because it paints a clear picture of it. So Spotify, for example, their North Star is time spent listening. So they wanted their users to spend more time listening to music on their service. Airbnb, we all know Airbnb as well, like the number of nights booked was their target. So they didn't want to increase number of people on the platform. They wanted to increase the number of nights those individual people were spending on that platform. And LinkedIn, good one, is they were monthly active users. So again, everything you can see here relates to product or business and their customer. And that is what your North Star is. That's where you should be starting, because it ties in your own needs. And again, putting that customer at the heart of the decisions you make. So how do you define your North Star? Where do you start? Sometimes you think you've got a good one, and maybe you do, that's really good. But the way that I always love to do it is workshop it. Like workshopping anything it's one of the easiest and quickest way to come up with solutions to everything that you do. So consider these key customer related metrics that are gonna drive your growth, and start talking about it together with your teams, or even bring in a facilitator to help drive those discussions. Either way works. So a bit of an idea of how that workshop could look. There's a big, messy cluster of Post-it notes, which I love to see. That is ideas on a wall. That's like, it's the stage one of that thinking. So get like a group of 5 or 7 people into a room to talk about your North Star. If you're a small business and a startup, get those 2 and 3 in a room. Start just talking about all the things that you think you need to get to with your customer and your product, and just map them out. Put everything. There is no wrong idea in this scenario. Just put them up on a wall. So from there, you go through a bit of a lengthy process then of affinity mapping it. So take everything that you got up there and start clustering it into ideas or topics or categories that are really, really similar. And then you'll probably start to notice that even though you've got hundreds of Post-it notes up there, the cluster of topics and categories are actually quite small, and you'll end up taking 1,000 down into, I'm exaggerating numbers here, but down into like 20 key ideas. So now you've got your clusters, you've got your idea of all the different types of focuses and areas that you want to start achieving some kind of success within your business. So then the next stage is obviously the voting and decision. We need to now decide which one we think is a priority. We can't have 20 North Stars. We want to have the really tight, small focuses. We want to have that either 1 or 2 that are going to drive our core decision-making moving forward. So as a team of people, like, just take some sticky notes or just have an open discussion around it, and choose and vote on the ones you think are most important. Ideally, I like to give often like 3 or 4 dots to every single person, and then you just put them up. You can put as many dots on one as you want, or you can spread them out as thinly as you need.
And maybe do it at the same time, so you're not influenced by other people's decision making as well.
Yeah, great.
Chris and Jason, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Yeah, sure.
We have a question from Jeff. Jeff, if you just want to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, sure.
It may have to do with his screen viewing. He was having a bit of trouble in the chat box with that. Go ahead.
Okay.
Thanks, Dorian. Yeah, look, I can see the guys really well. They're on full screen, but they've done something and I can't get out of it.
No.
Their slide deck, I can't see. It's tiny.
Okay, so in your view screen, you should have on the top right corner, you should have a little icon that if you run your cursor over it, it says swap shared screen or with video, or swap shared video with screen. Do you see that?
No.
Okay, Jeff, I might ring you on. I'll mute. If anybody else,
I can see you in full screen now.
Yeah, because I'm talking. I think it has something to do with your settings. Is everybody having the same problem? If you can just pop that in the chat box. If anybody else is having the same problem.
Jeff, maybe try double clicking on what you want to look at.
Yeah, I've done that several times.
Okay.
Jeff, can you just take a picture of what you're looking at and text it to me? Please?
It just seems to have become good by itself.
Right. Okay, if anybody else is having the same problem, I'll just, I'll post my phone number in the chat box. If you just want to send me a text message, if you're having the same problem, I can work you through this offline. Thanks guys. Go ahead.
All right. Voting decision. So yeah, so put your dots up. Everyone, as Jason said, put them up at the same time. You don't want to be like showing any favoritism or like influencing other people's decisions. You want it to be an even playing field when it comes to making these decisions. So post your dots up and then make a decision on which one has the highest clusters. They should become that North Star, that focus for your business. If you
haven't followed, like, done this kind of thing before, and you think it sounds a bit weird, I highly recommend the process of workshopping like this, of, where it's super divergent thinking to get, or just dump all of your different ideas down, get them all up on the board. And it's especially, it's kind of like an collective intelligence when you have other people in the room as well. Some really good insights come out of it. And it's amazing how much of it can be clustered into different groups, and the benefits of it and the clarity it can provide at the end is really valuable. So I really do recommend going through a basic process like that, and let us know if you do want more information on workshopping. Chris has got a lot of details on that.
Yeah, so one of the other opportunities it has is with these clusters is it does create like opportunities further down the pipeline.
Yeah.
Like all these things you put up there, they're not set and forget. It's like, right, this is our core focus now. These are the things actually we can look at later once we've achieved our particular goals. So an extra thing to note here is if you do have, maybe there's one or two that have the same number of dots on it. Well, the one thing you want to make is you always have a key decision maker who's in the room. So before, as you get to this point, one particular person should be have that final say if there's an off balance in the results. Often that can be the CEO or the founder, or if it's an equal player field, just have a vote together on who makes that final decision. So then lastly, obviously, because you're going to have a cluster of things and it's going to be a topic, the next thing you want to do is then articulate it. So turn it into that single statement that is going to be your North Star, that goal for your organization, looking at product and customer. So you want to make sure to keep that articulation short. It should be actionable, create opportunity, and it needs to relate, again, to the customer and the product, because we want that customer at the core of everything that you do, as I mentioned before. And so if you think about the notes that I mentioned at the start with Airbnb and the likes, their articulations and their North Stars were very, very simple, but it was so clear, and they created a lot of opportunity. It meant that everything that they tried could tie back to a reasoning around why they were doing it. So that's it. So you've defined your North Star. Then what's the next step from there, mate?
Okay, so now you know where you're going.
Yeah.
Now, how are you going to get there? So you need some kind of a map or a plan. And what that typically looks like in the business world is a business plan, and conventional wisdom tells us that startups or businesses in general need to have a 5-year business plan that looks at the size of the opportunity and the problem being solved and the solution that the new venture is going to provide.
Got to have that 100-page document.
Yeah, it's got to at least take you 6 months to prepare it. And it's got to have a 5-year, forecast of financials, profits and cash flow. And can we do like hands up? I mean, I'm just want to know who's actually got a business plan.
Okay, so you can, if you have a business plan, if you'd like to raise your hand using the raise hand icon. We've got 2 people with 3. Can you guys see that?
Okay.
There's 4 participants that have raised hand.
There's windows everywhere here.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. But that's interesting. So, I mean, there it is. Cool. And how often do you guys revert to that? And is it still valid? You don't necessarily need to answer it. You can if you'd like to, but the point that I'm, trying to make is that it's very common for plans to be set, and it does take a lot of time to put these together, and they turn into these big documents. And but the problem with them is that they're based on assumptions and long-term assumptions. And the truth is, we live in a pretty uncertain world, especially as the last year's proven to us, is things can change very quickly, and a long-term plan like that is completely invalid most of the time. We can't control.
Andre has, he said,
cool.
the
Use
lean
lean canvas. Terrific.
Which is just as powerful.
Yeah.
A little bit more,
that's Andre.
A little bit more advanced.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll get to, so Andre, to your point, another way of doing that, to have a business plan template that is a bit more adaptable and a bit more flexible, and something that we can look back to and use to get an idea of the different components of the business, and provide a bit of planning and structure to the business, is using a business model canvas. There's also a lean canvas that Andre's pointed out, which is just slightly more driven to startups and focusing on lean principles. We've chosen to promote the business model canvas because it's a bit more scalable once you kind of get going, and it can be applied to bigger businesses as well. So if there's other, it still covers all the boxes, but essentially does the same thing.
And it's also like a good starting point. And if you are organization that wants to get into integrating more of those lean processes and those ideas, it's very, very easy to go from the business canvas to the lean canvas. It's almost
that's
just adding a few extra bits of insight.
Exactly, totally. That's right. So the business model canvas, can you go to the next slide? Thanks. So the business model canvas was actually created by a Swiss business theorist, and it was grounded on the lean startup movement, which was created a couple of years before that by a guy called Eric Ries. And it was first published in 2010 in his book called Business Model Generation. Just quickly, there's another poll here, if we don't mind. Just I want to see who's familiar with the BMC and if you're using it in your business, because that's going to really
quick poll. BMC?
Yep. It's another on scale of 1 to 10. Ever heard of it? Okay. There is we've got quite a few people that haven't heard of it. So we might just watch a quick video that explains it quite well.
It's great. This means it's super relevant, which is
that's good. It's actually on that board. Do you want to just pop that video up?
Thanks for sharing that, guys. That was really good.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I won't share the results for this, so I'll go next.
Yeah.
In here?
Yep.
Can everyone still see that video that's loaded up?
So just go right down to there it is.
Can you see that, Dorian?
Yep, I can see it.
Yep, cool.
I'm just gonna...
Perfect, yep. Hopefully there's sound. Oh, it doesn't really matter. It's only kind of background music anyway.
Maybe you talk to it.
So essentially there's a bunch of different segments that actually it talks actually about them, but there's a bunch of different segments of components of that makes up the business, and it breaks them down and provides a way for you to think about what those different parts of the business are, or different functions or activities.
Value, the key partners, and the cost structure of the business model. But it's not sufficient to just enumerate the 9 building blocks. What you really want to do is to map them out on a pre-structured canvas. This is what we call the business model canvas, a tool that helps you map, discuss, design, and invent new business models. Let's briefly go through the 9 building blocks, starting with the customer segments. These are all the people or organizations for which you're creating value. This includes simple users and paying customers. For each segment, you have a specific value proposition. These are the bundles of products and services that create value for your customers. The channels describe through which touchpoints you're interacting with customers and delivering value. The customer relationships outline the type of relationship you're establishing with your customers. The revenue streams make clear how and through which pricing mechanisms your business model is capturing value. Then you need to describe the infrastructure to create, deliver, and capture value. The key resources show which assets are indispensable in your business model. The key activities show which things you really need to be able to perform well. The key partners show who can help you leverage your business model, since you won't own all key resources yourself, nor will you perform all key activities. Then once you understand your business model's infrastructure, you'll also have an idea of its cost structure. So with the business model canvas, you can map out your entire business model in one image. This works for startup entrepreneurs just as well as for the most senior executives.
Okay, cool. So, just trying to go back to there's an example canvas here that it's a very basic representation of an online service. It's just a dummy one, but it gives you an idea of the types of things that might fit into each activity. And we're going to be going through these, but this is a really useful tool because given the nature of the world as it is, and the markets and how volatile they are and how quickly things can change. We want to be able to revert back to our canvas on quite a frequent basis to just to review what's going on and perhaps move things around. So what I would recommend is actually having a live version like this. So you can actually, and Miro, which is the tool that we're using at the moment, is a really great tool to do that. And you can do this for free. And this is seriously just a straight up template from Miro that you can, we're going to actually go through the process of populating some of these things. So you can actually get started. And then what I would recommend is having this live for your team to be able to have access to and review frequently to test new ideas. So it's designed to be ever evolving and to be continuously revisiting your business strategy and testing new hypotheses. But how do we do that? I mean, how do you use this, go about this in an iterative manner? And this is where the lean startup comes into it. So it's great to have new ideas that are going to change the world, but how can you validate them before you've invested a lot of time and money and resources into it, which essentially are just assumptions. So this is the core principle of the lean startup, which is testing your assumptions and validating your ideas before spending very quickly before spending a lot of money and resources on them. So just a bit on the lean startup. So it's kind of where we're up to. Oh, sorry, just on the business model canvas, if you do want a bit more help with it, there's I think we missed a slide, but that's right. We'll just carry on. There's a video that we've got on our website that, oh, it's gone. Oh, it's down there. Oh, well,
You've gone ahead.
We'll talk about it later.
Embraced it.
Anyway, let's move on to the lean startup.
You're talking about lean startup down here?
Yeah, is that where we're up to? Oh, no, sorry, sorry, my bad. So first we're going to start populating the business model canvas. So, and in pure nature of customer centricity, the first person you're going to look at is your customer. So Chris is going to walk us through the, defining your perfect customer. Sorry.
I was just going to let you
Sorry,
know. It's great.
You're flexible.
Let's
Like
get
just
straight
run
to
it.
Yeah. So when you're doing your business canvas model, the first area you do start is the customer, and it can be often quite a hard thing to get an idea of who your customer is. And there's lots of different ways you can explore. I guess with the business model canvas, the first thing you'd want to do is just with your own basic understanding, with your own, maybe you've done a bit of, qualitative research, you've done a bit of desk research, you've done some stuff online, you have your own idea. You've probably come up with your idea based on what you know of a certain customer type already. And so you start with populating that into your business model canvas. But then you start getting into the next stages. You're like, oh, what are the channels that they want to use? And what are the types of things I need to talk to? And then, as we'll discuss later, what's the value proposition that's around that? You're like, maybe I don't know my customer as well as I do. So I might have to go back and readdress and have a look at who the customer types are. What are the things that drive them? What's their emotions, etc. So as I mentioned before, the customer should be at the heart of every business decision that you make. It's at the core of your marketing. It's the core of all your language and all your strategies, how you grow and improve, or what you should grow and improve, etc.
That's why the business exists ultimately.
It's exactly right. You have built it for a particular customer need, whether it's B2B or B2C. So how do you know who your customer? How can you start defining and exploring it beyond what what I've mentioned here, number 3, of what your own guesses and assumptions are? So you can go through the process of doing some research around quantitative and qualitative research. So either you're utilizing analytics and data that you've captured in your CRMs, if you already have them, or within Google Analytics or whatever, or you can just go out and do some research online, look at your competitors, see what their customers are and what they might be targeting towards all of their marketing campaigns, etc. So there's a lot of stuff up there you can start doing it, but it can be very time consuming, right? So one of the easiest ways to find out who your customers are is often just to talk to them. And this comes back to the stuff that you were mentioning around the lean process and the idea of like quickly trying to validate something is literally just talk to them. You've probably got a few emails, at least a handful of some loyal customers, whether they are businesses that you're already engaging with, could be even friends and family, or you may just have, a small database of people, loyal customers. You can just put, ask some questions. And really simply put, you just gather insights and information on their needs, their wants, and their desires. And that's how you can start building out a basic framework of who your customers are without having to spend often tens of thousands of dollars getting in a consultant or, reaching out to platforms, doing big data research campaigns, etc. Like just talk to the customers that you already have. That is a good first step to take.
Chris, can you just with those discussions, might be helpful just to run through maybe a list of 2 or 3 questions, open-ended questions that might be for extracting information, or are you about to go through that?
I'm glad you asked. So what I'm going to show you is just a couple of frameworks that you can start to follow around it. And I guess it's difficult to find specific questions because every product need is slightly different. It's targeting a different thing. But if you follow these types of frameworks, you'll start to get an idea of how you can start asking questions to your customers. So I'm going to show you 2 models. One is a really basic. These are two quadrant focus models looking at the emotions and the sort of hindrances and opportunities. And the second model is following that more of that business model canvas style model, which can be a map or a product that you can take and utilize throughout your business and evolve it as you find out more or as your customer even changes, because that does happen with products. So for 3 elements, the 2 items here you've got on your left-hand side, which this is more of the emotional drivers of your customer. And on the right-hand side, these are the triggers and the barriers. So the literal things that either make a customer decide that that's what they want to pick up, or the things that hold them back from wanting to engage in those products. So the quadrant looks at the sort of the current state and also, I guess, that future state, so the desires. So in the top left, you've got your current and your think. So what is the customer currently thinking? So why this is almost the purpose around the existence of your product. Like, why does your product exist? What is it that the customer is thinking to going, oh, actually, I kind of need this solution in my life, but they don't yet know that your solution exists. So then on the right-hand side is like, then what do we want the customer to be doing then to engage with these products? So what are the things that we want them to be feeling? What do we want them to be doing in order for them to make that decision to go, actually, this product is the perfect fit to me? And then we go into that more emotional status. So what does the customer want to be thinking? So what do we want them to be thinking in their mindset? So the current is like, currently what they're doing, and the desire is what we actually want them to then be doing once they find out about your product. What's that tweak in their mind that goes, actually, I want to use that. And then on the right hand side is on the bottom right is the desire and do, which is what do we want the customer to then be doing? So they've made that, we've got them thinking about it, and what do we want them to be doing to convert to that product? What are those key physical actions? So that's those sort of emotional drivers, and it's a good starting point to find out who your customer is. And again, you can fill this in while you're talking to them. There's 2 ways you can do it. Just have that map in front of you and start writing notes, or you can have a map on a wall, start putting post-it notes and fill it out. Really nice and easy. And on the right-hand side, obviously, you have the triggers and barriers. So these become the more the physical aspects of it. So what are the triggers and needs? What would trigger the customer to want to utilize your product or want to purchase your product or be converted by it? That's in the top left and top right, barriers and needs. So what is stopping them from engaging with it? What are the things that are preventing the customer from wanting to purchase it, wanting to buy it? And lastly, in the 2 bottom left and bottom right is what does the customer not like about the category? So it could be just, things that are terrible at, from a Google, for example, you don't want everyone knowing about your data. For them, that's a big barrier and a pain point for their customers. And then on the bottom right is what are some of their misconceptions around the category? So what are some misnomers? What are some things that people perceive about it, but aren't necessarily true? And these become areas that you can start to focus on either improving your product or they become opportunities, right? So if there is a pain point, you can go, right, how can I overcome this pain point with my product? What can I do to alleviate the thing that is stopping them from making that decision to want to use it? And then similarly on the barrier side of things, right, is what can I tweak in order to change their perception of this product so that they go, actually, what everyone's saying isn't true. This actually works really, really well for me. And you can utilize these as maps. We will share this as part of the PDF download for you guys, so you can utilize it. Really simple way of showing who your customer is. And again, going back to canvas model thinking, you can evolve it as time goes on. And the idea here is you also want to make sure you're creating this for each of the personas that you identify as potentially your customers. So as you ask them questions, you want to have multiple maps, I guess, as you start to get more refined on understanding who your customer is. And then you can take that next step, get a bit more complex, and sort of merge it into a nice big single persona frame for you. That this kind of feeds into the business model canvas features. So at the top, you've got who are we empathizing with and what do they need to do. So these are the things that the customer is going to drive their decision making, and this becomes the goal within your business and the opportunities in order for you to alter your product to focus it more on the customer. And then around the edges and the bottom, this becomes the more emotional state stuff. So again, going back to the quadrants, it's the things that you hear, that they're hearing, the things that they're doing, the things that they say, and the things that they see. And the benefits of these, this type of questioning is it starts to tailor the language that you put out there into the market. So when you start creating your campaigns, you can go, okay, the customer has an emotional drive around this point. So this is the type of thing I need to be saying to promote my product, or this is how I should be shaping my value proposition because that's the type of thing that they expect to say. And so this drives it helps to shape a lot of the decisions that you make around your products in the future. So yeah, so again, we'll provide a snapshot of this in the PDF so you guys can start having a play around and filling it in. But yeah, does anyone have any questions on that? I know I just I did a lot of rambling, a lot of talking about questions and stuff like that. So drop some questions in if you have any.
Because we're about to ask for you to think about this for yourself and have some input in back to us so we can use it later. So if you have any questions in applying this to your own customer, drop them in the chat.
So I guess to summarize, you're filling in your business canvas, you've identified a couple of personas, you go, all right, how do I build on this? You start engaging your audience that you've got, ask them questions, get some feedback into it, and that you can use these frameworks in terms of how you populate and shape what those the feedback from the customers that you talk with. Or alternatively, the research and analytical side of things, you would populate that into here as well.
It's a really good canvas, this, because it enables you to go very deeply into understanding your customer, because it's very easy for us to have assumptions and have ideas about who our perfect customer is and what their problems are and how we go about solving that. But actually going and speaking to them, especially if it's somebody who's out in the field or something like that, and it might be, actually there's a big difference in understanding the problems someone might be having in the sale yards with, managing the design of or like opening gates or even a cattle crush or something like that. And so if you're coming up with, if your product is some automation product for a cattle crush, for example, then you're not going to have a very good understanding of what the problems are if you're not in the field with them actually experiencing it for yourself. So having a deep understanding, be able to empathize with the person who's actually doing the work, understanding really deeply what small issues that they're facing with the way things are, totally, and that enables you to create your product. So it's a really important point to be really understanding who your customer is, because it changes your whole business.
Exactly right. They are at the core, they're at the center point of everything you do.
There's a question there. So Al has said, the canvas and strategy is fantastic. Wondering tips on how to reach potential customers. Imagine a startup that wants to explore a potential new market and doesn't have current connections with customers in that market.
So one of the key things that we utilize in the design sprint side of things, and I think I sort of touched on this at the start as well. So great question, by the way. Thank you, Al. is engaging an immediate audience of people around you. So friends and family are a great initial starter to kind of explore insights into certain customers. So if you don't have that database already, or you don't have those users, have a chat to the people that that are closest to you, and you can almost fill in a lot of this information based on just those simple conversations. And like, don't talk to one or two, talk to 10, 20 people really quickly, and those close people will allow you to start thinking a bit further. And from there, you can take those insights and you can start then creating those little basic campaigns, whether you're doing, I don't know, if you're B2B, you might be doing a LinkedIn campaign, so you can decide how to shape the content based on the discussions that you have with your with those friends and family. And you can then trial and test and learn, which we'll touch on the lean process shortly around testing and learning, to tailor that, and you can start building on those databases from there. So everything starts with the conversation. It starts with talking to the people that are closest to you.
Yeah, and ultimately it starts with people. So every market, every opportunity, whatever it is, every problem being solved, every solution that we create is ultimately for people, whether they're a user of a product, or they're a person who receives the value from that product. So whatever the new market is that you're interested in approaching, you're going to have some idea of where they hang out, whether it's online or in person. And the best thing you can do is, like Chris said in his other slide, like just go and speak to them. And just, even if it's just an initial thing of like, what do you think about this? And just ask as many questions as you can. And you could even, there's a framework around these things to drive information out of people that is really useful, which is called the 5 whys. So you could ask, you could put forward, like, you could ask them how they feel about something, or what is their experience or something, or their opinion of something. And then say, oh, that's interesting. Why is that? And then they say, and it's like, oh, well, why is that? And then it's really interesting where that ends up, because it makes them really consider their intentions and the motivations of that. So that could be a useful way. So to answer your question, go and speak to as many people as you can and ask them why 5 times. Yeah,
it's the idea that once the assumption is that once you get to the 5th why, you run out of excuses, and the response becomes almost honest and literal.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So can we have a go at people contributing their own who their target customer is? What I'd like to do is for us to populate maybe 2. Is if to some, I assume there's businesses here who have an existing product, or you're looking to release a product of some kind. Where is Al? So
I would imagine you'd have both here, Jason.
Yeah.
But that there's existing businesses here.
Okay. Is there more questions that we asked them to do on the next slide?
I've got a few things when we hit the value proposition.
Okay.
But the next slide goes back.
Okay, cool. So just in the chat, I just want to, can some people just tell us who your customers are, who your customer segments are? Like, who is your customer that you're building who is your business customer? And I want to use this as an example for later on.
So pop that in the chat box.
Yes, please. Yes. Rural and regional producers, processors. Okay, terrific.
New parents.
Okay.
Nice.
Anyone else want to throw something in there?
Educators. Interesting one.
This is a good point. So, and I'm just going to call it. So Jessica Byrne raised a great point there around you're a graphic designer, just open up a print shop. It has a very wide range of customers. And this is a big problem that a lot of people face, is how do you define who your customer is if you feel like you have so many?
Yeah.
Something that, and I apologize, I forget the gentleman's name, But there's this great idea that around, having that niche customer. So who is the one that's going to have the greatest amount of value to your business? And they become the customers that you focus on. So if you look at a lot of organizations, if you end up going too wide with, and I will touch on this on the value proposition side of things, if you go too wide on your value proposition or too wide on your customers, you end up getting only a tiny snippet of everything. Whereas if you focus on a high value customer, and that's where you focus all of your efforts, you focus your product, you focus your campaigns, you get a much wider group of that particular customer, and that ends up giving way more revenue or profitability into your organization. And as you might reach a point where actually I've got as much as I want for that customer, then you can start tailoring your product for that next customer group and that next customer group, and that's how you scale. It's start refine, and then
it's so true. It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? I mean, you'd think going wider would be a bigger market opportunity, but in fact, you're always better off getting super specific, finding a really little niche and just nailing it.
Exactly.
The 80-20 rule is a good example of that. So, and then once you've got your traction, then you've got a lot of credibility to try new markets, and we'll get to how you can test these different hypotheses later. Okay, awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that. So we'll just run with, I've just made notes. We've got the rural and regional producers, processors. We've got educators and musicians. I've got a double up, and we've got home gardeners we'll use.
80 to 20-year-old male and females, agriculture producers. Nice.
Yep, I've got that there. So I don't know if that's the same one, but we can share it.
More refined.
Yeah. Cool. We'll run with that. No worries, Peter. Thanks for joining us. We'll just use 3. Okay. So moving right along. So the next one is.
We got a question here.
Oh, yeah.
The 80.
Oh, right. Yeah. So it's, how would you describe that? So it's essentially out of a market, 20% of, so if you have like a bunch of customers, it's a rule that can be applied to a lot of different things across. Seems to be like a natural kind of phenomenon that is relatable to a lot of different things. It's often referred to or applied to customer segments where you might get 80% of your revenue through 20% of your customer base. And it's just this kind of weird thing that shows up all the time in business and in life. I mean, if you think about that, yeah, okay, cool, no worries.
Pareto principle.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's keep moving. How are we going for time? I think we're on point.
Yeah.
So next is looking at the value proposition. So, over to you. Yeah.
Great. So we've defined our segments. We have a good understanding of who our customer is now. And from there, we can even start talking about some of the relationships and the channels. We start feeding in those aspects because we've done the research and we understand them much more thoroughly. And the next stage of the business canvas, as highlighted, is identifying what that key proposition, which is fundamentally the value proposition of your business and your product. Let me paint a picture. So what is a value proposition? This is something I got from a guy called Isaac Jeffries. It's a great little story of he had this downloadable document around finding out and how to define your value proposition. So paint a picture. You are your friends have just sent you a message where they're like invited you over for a nice big dinner. They've moved into a nice place. They've got, a fantastic new house, great view, and they're well off. They're a well off bunch of people. You're like, all right, I want to bring something nice to this. I want to bring some champagne, a bottle of champagne, some chocolate, and some nice fruits to, for the party. As you do, you want to bring some stuff to any kind of event that you go. So you're thinking about all the stuff you want to bring, and you look at your watch, you're like, oh crap, I've got so much work to do. I'm not going to have time to grab all this stuff before I head to this party this afternoon. So you text your mate and you say, hey mate, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to make it to the shops to pick up a bunch of stuff. Do you mind picking me up some chocolate, some fruits, and some wine to go to this party? Your friend's like, great, no worries. Anyway, so you finish up work, you rush to the party, and you meet your friend just outside, and he gives you a cask of wine, a bag of cheese, and some chocolate, like some cooking chocolates. And you think, what the hell? This is not what I thought. But from your friend's point of view, he was on point. He bought exactly what you wanted, but not from his point of view, not from the guy who actually needed the stuff to walk in. He can't present that stuff to them. You get frustrated. You're like, what have you done? Like, what? This is, how am I going to give this stuff to these people?
You got what you asked for.
Yeah, you got what you asked for, but it wasn't on point. So the idea is that it was never about the products themselves. It wasn't about, you know, the chocolate or the fruits or the bag of cheese. It was about what that product was saying when you arrived at the thing. It was about the fact that you wanted to thank the host, that you wanted to create some nice talking points around this awesome food and drink that you bought, and you wanted to treat them with something special. And there was probably a bit of ego involved in it as well, right? You wanted to show off with your own stuff in this special event.
It's all emotion driven.
Yeah, exactly. It's emotion driven. Yeah. So from the person who purchased the stuff for you, their value proposition didn't align to your value proposition. It kind of missed the mark. And so that is why it's so important to identify that and make sure you are aligned on the value position of your product to your customer. Because if it's not, they're going to
be showing up with goon bags
to a customer who wants a nice bottle of wine. So what is the value proposition, ideally? It's the motivation behind each purchase that a customer makes, right? So it's not about the product. It's about how the product makes the person feel. It's the emotional drivers, how it's going to make them feel better about themselves. Like, there's a bit of that playing with that ego for the customers. Like, why do I want to purchase your product? Oh, because it makes me feel good. Oh, because it makes my life easier. Oh, because I save 5 minutes doing something that usually takes me 20. So that's what your value proposition. So some great examples of this in a real life scenario. And again, I've chosen some really big brands because it just paints a much more obvious picture. Number one is McDonald's. So in, I think, I can't remember when it was 2010 or something, or maybe even earlier, a movie was released called Super Size Me, which painted McDonald's as a company that had unhealthy food that you shouldn't need, you shouldn't purchase. And it was a guy who was literally eating McDonald's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, which you think to yourself, it's just,
how good is that?
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
That's true. And but regardless of the negative picture that the movie was supposed to paint, it didn't actually impact overall global sales of McDonald's too badly. And that's because McDonald's value proposition didn't align to what this movie was trying to pitch. McDonald's has never said, eat your food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. McDonald's is like, hey, we're a treat. We're something where it's you come to McDonald's because of the playground, because it's a place to have fun. You come there, it's an oasis on that long road trip. It's a place where you can, no matter how much money you have, whether you have $2 all the way up to $20, you'll be able to get a good meal for that once-off treat that you have. And so that's what their value proposition. It isn't that premium product, breakfast, lunch, healthy meal. And so it did impact them. Apple, great thing, early 2000s when they released the iPod. My God, that thing just boomed. But at their time of release, there was actually a whole bunch of other products in the market that were on paper better than theirs. Sony had a product that was released, had a few gigabytes worth of data space, had really good high quality AAA-C, if that means anything to video codecs. It was fundamentally a better product, but iPod smashed them in sales because their value proposition they went to market aligned with what the customer wanted. And it was as simply as them saying, you get 1,000 songs in your pocket. And just because of that, they boomed because it made sense to the customer. The customer was like, oh yeah, I want 1,000 songs. Whereas Sony was like, get 5 gigabytes or get good sound quality, which the customer didn't care about.
And it's kind of the whole proposition of it's right there. They really captured exactly the experience of the product rather than defining what it is. Exactly. It has these specifications. It's like, what is the experience and what is the value being? Oh, I get to have 1,000 and it's in my pocket.
Exactly. Exactly right. Perfectly said. And so is one of my favorite examples just because of the exorbitant price tags they put on a lot of their products. And apologies if you do buy Louis Vuitton stuff. But at its core, Louis Vuitton is it's a leather goods product.
Not necessarily any better than any
not
other.
Necessarily, no. But I mean, sure, they have a lot of premium services, but fundamentally, they are just a leather goods. They make bags, they make some clothes, make some shoes, and some jewelry here and there. But the way that they're able to cut through the market is because they sell status. Their value isn't about leather goods. Their value is about status. It's about the image that you get and the lifestyle that you probably have around having this Louis Vuitton bag. It's showing off your prestige and your success.
I've got mine here actually.
Yeah. Do you want to bring it up this? And so these are some great examples of value propositions and how they're aligning to the customer's need and their desires to make them feel good about whatever purchases they make with your brands. And this, again, these are B2C examples, but the same idea goes into the B2B space when you're engaging with other businesses. Other businesses want to make sure that they align with you and your product. They want to make the decision to purchase your product because you understand who they are, because you align with their own probably value propositions, their own visions, and their own desires to improve their products. So I have a quick task. If everyone is happy to share, I'm sure you've all got, maybe you have an idea of your value propositions, maybe you don't, that's fine. If you want to just kind of list a few of your value propositions into the chat bot there on the right side.
And especially please do for those businesses of the rural and ag producers and processors and the educators and musicians and the home gardeners, please.
Just aligning so we can show you some stuff at the end in terms of the business model campus. And following this, we'll go through some further tasks around how we can develop our value proposition. I haven't finished.
Okay.
Value propositions, if everyone's like,
okay. Yeah.
So it's interesting, like the other areas of value proposition, if you saw while everyone's filling it in, I'll say a few extra things. The simplicity of it is also really important when it comes to value proposition. You don't want to create statements that are like this and this. And so my target market is this, and we give them this and this and this and this. It goes back to my Sony example where they showed off too much. It's about the simplicity of it. What is that key thing that aligns? So thank you, Jeff. So value proposition is unique Australian-made organic fertilizer backed by university and field trials. Excellent. Nice sustainable value proposition.
Get this chat.
Does anybody else have any value propositions to pop into the chat box?
I'm interested to hear so Jeff, I assume you're.
Thank you, Al.
I need to.
So Jason, Jeff's clients are the producers. No, sorry, Jeff's clients are the. I think he's mentioned the gardener. Gardener, ultimately broadacre croppers.
Thank you, Al. So Al's is, yes, just thinking through the form, what you've been talking about, business is sheet music, business for schools, etc. Great value proposition worth exploring is to focus on the Australian culture as our composers are Aussies, and to promote the social connection with their products, composers, images and small blood connections with and about the composer to promote the human connection. So this is a great one, and a good example here is of sometimes when we talk about our value propositions, we get to a point where we're like, we do this and this and this. So something we can look at, and maybe we can chat later, Al, is how can we break that value proposition down to be really straight to the point and attack that core customer that is going to return the most amount of value. And the core features that are going to give the most value to that customer as well. And maybe some of these slides that I'll talk about shortly will help refine that. I can't see the name here. Carla, here we go. So the natural choice for your family. I like it. That's a nice one, nice and punchy there. So Carla, what products do you sell?
I think she was to parents. I think her
parents. Fantastic. So
yeah, new parents rather. Carla was new parents.
Beautiful. So talking about the health benefits, your product is all about great health benefits, and obviously it's focused on health benefits for the family. It's nice and clear. Very good. So improving transparency in casual labor market, dealing with wage theft and other employment deterrents. Sorry, my eyes aren't very good. I can't barely see the writing. Improving incentives, encourage greater transparency, efficiency, and casual labor market. Thank you, Jeff. So the thing here that you might want to think about when it comes to your value proposition is what is that? What is the number one thing that a particular segment or a particular customer group wants, and focus a lot on that. As the value proposition to your organization, it kind of sometimes things can get a bit lost if we create a lot of and this and this and this. And as a business or as a customer, if you see that product and you go, it does this and this and this, you kind of just go, oh, it kind of doesn't align with me. Because that's for someone else who wants the everything, who wants all those features. Coming back to the Apple example, it's the 1,000 songs in your pocket. So that's something to have a think about, Jeff, and perhaps some of the later slides will help see how you can shape and narrow that down into a really punchy value prop. But the idea is there, you can see it's around, you can see your customer and it's very clear on the products, which is good. And thanks, Al, and hope, yeah, no, it did, thank you, Al. Cool. Should we move on?
Yeah, yeah. I'll just continue capturing that, but you can keep going.
Great. So how can you create your value proposition? So this is a standard model. I've taken this particular picture just because it's nice and bright with blue and red from B2B International. I just took it off one of their blogs. Thank you very much, guys. So how can you create your value proposition? So this model looks at two things. On the left-hand side, it looks at the product and yourself and your business. And on the right-hand side, it looks at your customer. Now, the goal here is when you define your customer and you define your business and your product, they should meet nicely in the middle. And that middle point, that becomes your value proposition. So the great thing is if you followed a similar process to we just discussed, you will now have an understanding of who your customer is. So filling in this right-hand side should be really straightforward. So you just want to identify three things. What are the gains that the customer expects when it comes to dealing with this category or with this particular product? What are the pains? So what are the things that frustrate them? What are the things that hold them back from making the decision? And then what are the customer jobs to do? So what are the things that are the actions that they need to take in order to utilize and make the decision to use your product? And as you would remember from the quadrants or even from the customer canvas map, a lot of these topics were already there. So you should just practically pretty much be able to copy paste a lot of those insights in. The idea also here is that you want to create one of these for every single segment. So don't cram multiple customers into one. You want to create those into separate customer segments. So you might have 4 or 5 value propositions depending on which particular customer brings the highest amount of value to you. Excellent. So then once we define who our customer is, we fill that in hopefully really quickly based on the insights you would have gathered before, we now decide to look internally. Now, the key thing about this is that you are looking at it from your perspective. You're not trying to think about filling it in based on what you think the customer wants from you. It's what you want to get out of the business and you want to sell. So starting with your gain creators. So what are the benefits that you see your product is going to give out there to the market? The pain relievers. So where do you see the product solving problems and relieving stress? So a good example, it's going to be making people, as I mentioned before, spend 5 minutes doing something versus the 20 minutes they usually would. So what are the pain relievers there? And what are the products and services? So these are like the features and the functions. What are the things that your product does or what your business does to serve your market? So again, really simply, you just fill in both sides. And then hopefully, or ideally, if you have a really good product that aligns perfect with your customer, those ideals will align. And that central alignment point becomes your value proposition. Now, more often than not, they're not going to align. And this creates two things. It creates opportunity for you to refine your product. It creates opportunity if you potentially relook at who your customer might be. Maybe you've got the wrong customers that you've defined. Or it creates opportunity for you to create a pipeline of work in order to develop new functions and features in order to tailor to the needs of your customer. But let's for that sake, so if you do have that problem, then obviously readdress and refine. But if you don't and you think that, right, this is matching perfectly, then you can go about making your value prop statement. And I'll talk about this now. So this is a really simple way to take the canvas and turn it into a bit of a statement. So it goes with the product and services that you have, helps, which is your customer segment, who want to, which is the customer job, buy, which is the action, by what it is they're trying to serve, and if there's any gains that are associated with that. And then unlike our competing value, unlike other competitors, etc., this is the benefit that you have. So this is a nice, clean way to do that. And I'll provide a bit more of a clear example for that in a second.
Can we ask people to have a go at filling that afterwards?
Yeah, definitely.
So especially maybe a couple of the businesses that we've got here, being the new parents, the home gardeners, and who's looking at the agriculture producers. There's just a few gaps here in the key propositions and the customers. But so, and also Andre, I'd be super keen to hear, it doesn't need to be perfect, but it'd be great if people could fill out this template. It's a really, really useful, powerful way to think about your business. So keep that in mind as Chris continues providing examples.
Excellent. So should we let that, do people want to start?
Did you want to go through it?
Oh, example first?
Yeah, maybe go through the example first, I reckon. Yeah.
Oops, I've just clicked on that. So a bit of an example in this map, it looks big and I probably better than I have it zoomed out because this is a couple of points from a project that we've done recently. I won't mention the company or the brand at all, but essentially what this business was trying to do is create a product that addressed a desire for students coming fresh out of a big course and a big learning around entrepreneurial and business and creating their own organizations. An opportunity for them to take their ideas and gather get some investment into being able to build out their business potentially if it had legs to stand on. And there was a lot of other products in the market that provide this, a lot of type of angel investors and VC investors. And so they were struggling to try and articulate what it is that they wanted their product to do in the market that was unique. And so we went through this process of developing, identifying what their business is, identifying multiple customers, and we segmented out into 2 groups. So 2 key customers, one being the students that came out of it, and the second one being the investors themselves, potentially VCs, etc. So if I zoom in on the right here, what we ended up getting as a clear example was their product, which was the entrepreneur startup platform, helps young entrepreneurs and social ventures who want to gain investment by setting up campaigns and promoting their business. Unlike other businesses, we focus on social ventures without the expectation of a return. So nice and clear and cut point, you read it, you understand the product, you understand what the customer is, and you understand the benefits and the competition expectation, so competitive nature of it. So from a second one, which then looked at the investment side of things, is our donor investment platform helps local donors and businesses who want to donate or invest into social enterprise organizations by connecting them with new business opportunities and allowing them to engage and learn how the business is progressing. So unlike our competitors, we focus on local opportunities and startups. So you can see here really clear statements, not going and this and that and this. It was all about every single point had a purpose. Now, this is just the initial stage of creating your value proposition. Essentially, what you can then go from here is creating a more unique single sentence articulation. So if you have good writers or good, like Apple, for example, spends hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more, just to make their little 1 sentences like really punchy and really valuable. Obviously, we don't want to do this. I wouldn't recommend organizations doing this, but practicing how to break this down to then something that is 1 line becomes really beneficial for you as well. But this is the best first step to take. So on that note, if anyone wants to have a go at filling this in.
Yeah, let's have 5 minutes to spend a bit of time on that.
So I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see actually I'll go back to the other so you can see the statement.
So are you guys asking people just at home on a piece of paper to write down how they would answer these questions?
If they can drop it into the chat, that would be
Yeah,
fine.
Okay, in the chat box. Okay,
yes,
great.
please. Yeah.
I mean, you can practice sketching it on a piece of paper if you like, first, and then drop it in. But you have to spend a couple minutes just having a think about this key statement, and then share it in the chat box. It's incredible how much of value proposition can help a business shape where it's trying to go and shape the decisions that it makes. Like, you have your North Star, you kind of know what your target is, but you're missing that link between how I get there, why I'm getting there, and what the customer needs in order to get to that point, right?
It's amazing. It can actually like take quite a while for it to even become evident as well. Like, for it to truly uncover what the real, what the real value is for customers might buy your product or use your services, and then you'll assume that it's because of reason X, Y, Z, but you never, and then one day you're like, oh my God, this is actually the most important thing to them. It happens a lot.
Right. And it's actually a really good point if we tie it back to the business model canvas. When you're first developing your value proposition, expect it to evolve.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. 100%.
Expect it to change as you learn actually who your customers are and what they actually want, and as your product adapts to in the same manner. So don't feel like when you create, if you're starting out a business or you haven't thought about value proposition before, that whatever you create, that's it, that becomes it, and I'm never going to change it. That is not true at all. What you want to make sure it's doing is creating that opportunity for you to evolve your business, but provide some direction, provide that initial link between product and customer.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So segment very wide, diverse, unknown labor class. So unknown labor capacity, unknown employer ethics, improve information transparency, create reliability, improve information flow, and promote safe work environments, opportunities, and opponents. So if I'm linking that correctly, so you're saying our product and services, you have a very wide segment, helps unknown labor capacity and employer ethics, who want to improve information and transparency by creating reliability and improved information flow. Unlike our competitors, they promote safe work environments and opponents. Awesome. Makes sense. So I think the only thing that you might want to consider there is you said that your segments are very wide, which is fine. It's like you might be more established business and you've been out of diverse and you've created a lot of opportunities. But perhaps if you tried to focus in on a particular segment that, again, going back to the 80-20 rule that was mentioned before by people here, thank you very much for that, could create more opportunity for you just from a how you market yourselves perspective. It's like the way I like to say it, it's creating that Rolodex moment where you want a customer to think, oh yeah, that's totally something that relates to me. Whereas if you say something that's diverse and it doesn't, and they don't get that initial trigger that this is something I need because you've said a customer profile that doesn't list to it, you miss out on that opportunity. Or similarly, that person may know someone who fits into that segment or that category that you've stated, and that allows them to go, oh, I saw this product, this would be great for you. You should give it a go. Yeah. And that's super important, particularly if you're a B2B business and you're relying a lot on networking and stuff like that. If you go out to those networking groups and you don't have that refined value proposition, when you have 30 seconds to tie someone over, right? If you can't convince or can't explain your product in 30 seconds, you almost lose them when it comes to those big important networking events. And so having a refined value proposition that targeted, really focused on that small segment customer group is going to benefit you in those moments. Thanks, Jeff, for writing that out. 3,000 businesses, and we talk to different groups. So that's great, and that's really good. So it could be, and this comes to my point, you can have multiple value propositions depending on your segmented groups, which is also why you want to break them out. So something you may want to try having looking at is then when you're doing your marketing and you're targeting and you're trying to talk with them, I would expect you to talk to them in different ways. Like you're not going to be talking to one business in one sector exactly the same as another business in a different sector, because they have different needs, and therefore your product has probably a different value proposition depending on those things. And so that's probably why you're summarizing it nicely for us in a big group in a sense, but you may have different values for each one of them, which makes sense.
Yeah. There's always going to be more specific segments within a wider group, isn't there? Because
Exactly.
there's people are very, even though there's a lot of people, but we're still individuals, and we like to be kind of treated like that as well.
Exactly right. Thank you, Andre. So our network automation solutions help organizations with large data networks who need their critical servers running harmoniously by letting software control their network devices and improve operations efficiently, reducing the cost of ownership, unlike old school manual, laborious and error-prone approach.
It's awesome.
That's great.
I like it.
Straight to the point, and you understand. Like if you were to, use the networking example again. You had that 30 seconds to explain it. Like you got to articulate exactly what you said there, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, I get it. That makes sense." Well done, man. That was really good. Location creates difference, even with it. So 100%, Jeff. You're absolutely right. Like location. Income, culture obviously is a really big one. All of that creates different, often a lot of segments in, and particularly probably in your industry as well. That's super important to know. Seasonality, yeah, definitely. Different needs, particularly if you're out there hands-on helping people in their homes. Like, yeah, definitely. Kind of who want to become clean, and consistent. Hey, that's a good one. There you go, Jeff. Nice. So organic fertilizer helps home and market gardeners who want to become clean and green by replacing their costly synthetic chemicals and growing healthy plants full of natural goodness without worrying about the chemicals other products may contain. So, that's great. Perfect, mate. You could probably add something in there just on targeting particular customer groups, but you may have that more in your marketing side of things. But that's really clear. Nice work. Thank you, Al. So our sheet music helps teachers who want to have exciting and student-centered classes by offering products engaging and tailored for their students. Unique needs, unlike other more generic music products. So that's really good. Again, perfect. Makes sense. So we understand your customers. You're looking at music teachers who are obviously teaching a range of students. They want to create. They've got a product that is a bit more enjoyable and engaging. It's not just the normal basic training paper, and it addresses their unique needs. Otherwise, as you said, a lot of generic things. So it's a bit more out there. That's really nice. So Carla, thank you, Carla. So our Madonna Cream range helps new parents who want to reduce toxins in their children by using natural products and supporting an Australian business, unlike traditional baby supply companies that utilize preservatives and multiple allergens containing ingredients. This is great. That's spot on. So we know exactly what your product is just by reading that. We know who you're targeting, which is new parents who obviously just had their first, second kid. And having a sustainable message around everyone's need is a big thing out there right now, which is reducing toxins. So that's really good, nice and clear. And I reckon if you worked with someone who is really good with words and creating creative messages, I reckon you'd be able to produce something that's quite unique and really get some cut through in the market. That sort of iPod-esque idea. That was really good. Why can't we see Al's and the other Jeffs?
As I'm going to try to sort that with Jeff Curtin. I just tried calling him.
I know
why he can't see. He just can't see other people's contributions here.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure.
Sorry about that, guys.
Okay,
guys, that's fantastic. Thank you so much
awesome.
for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Should we
Yeah, I'm just
Do you want to go through a
trying
couple more?
to, I think because there's a bit there, we might just focus on a couple. The ag producers one. Just trying to map the proposition of that customer.
Hey guys, just on that issue with not being able to see everybody's comments, if you're making a comment in the chat box, you have a couple of choices at the bottom of that chat box for the webinar attendees. You can either post to all panelists or all panelists and attendees, or to specific people. If you're comfortable posting to all panelists and attendees, it will enable the other attendees to read what you're posting and probably help facilitate a better conversation. So if you can do that where you feel comfortable, otherwise you could just stick with all panelists. Thanks.
Educating musicians, new parents, regional producers.
Chris, just to add something to what you mentioned earlier, you know, what you talked about, having maybe some slightly different messaging for if you have a very, very wide, diverse set of potential customers. That's what a really good marketing person, that's a skill, is to be able to determine what you know, in an initial conversation, what box that customer might sit in, and then be able to build the conversation around that. That's where you know, a really skilled marketing person can come into play, because it's not a skill everybody has. Most people can develop it, but I just wanted to point that out. That's where marketing, paying for marketing,
can really benefit. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's like, and there's a lot of initial stages you can go through if you follow some of the stuff that we talked about to identify your segments and your opportunities. But it does get to the point where you start pushing out your opportunities and pushing out marketing campaigns, understanding how to then tailor those messages, setting out those segments, and identifying the opportunity within the uniquely within each one of those groups. That's where the marketing expertise comes in, and we kind of roll out really, successful campaigns inevitably.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's
excellent.
capture there. It's a little bit ad hoc, but we'll see how we go.
Excellent. So that's it for the value proposition. So let's look back at the canvas. So we've looked at our customer, we've defined our segments, blown out their feelings and emotions, which allows us to then tap into channels and opportunities, and then create our value proposition. So
yeah, cool. So using the business model canvas, so like Chris was saying, we've determined who our customers are, how we serve them, like what the key proposition is for them, and then we look at, okay, how do they experience that value? Like how are we giving them that value, or how are they consuming it or experiencing it in some way? And these are just I've just kind of jotted down some things as we've been chatting. So as you can see on the far right, we've got customer segments of, like, for example, educators and musicians, and mapped to a key proposition of exciting student-centered classes. And the product that essentially we're working with is sheet music. Similarly with home gardeners and potentially, broadacre farmers in the future, looking at a key proposition of healthy plants full of natural goodness without worrying about chemicals, which is great. It's a really good proposition. And then the actual, I don't know where that went, but the actual product is the fertilizer itself. And so then with new parents being the customer, we are providing a natural choice for their family. And the product is, what is the product on that one? I'm not sure. Anyway, whatever that one is. And then for the blue one, which is essentially corporate I'm guessing we didn't capture it for, it wasn't written in, but corporate enterprise or businesses essentially. And the proposition for them is to autopilot their data networks, making network operations faster, efficient and error-free, and letting software control their network devices. So that's kind of the core proposition, I think, at the bottom. So that's really well done, Andre. And the product being a network automation solution. So it's a service that automates a lot of the work that needs to be done. So it's a product. Okay, now, what we really want to do here is we've defined what our propositions are and who our customers are, and we have an idea about what the product is or how we're going to serve them or how they consume that value. But we want to be able to do that because all of these essentially are still assumptions. So we're making an assumption that new parents are going to, hang on, I might just remove that one, sorry, because I don't have sorry about that. But we're making an assumption, for example, that a automated solution, network solution, is going to provide corporate enterprise a faster, efficient, and error-free operation for their network. Similarly, we are making an assumption that educators and musicians are going to experience an exciting and student-centered classes through our unique sheet music product. So how do we validate that and continuously optimize things to make sure that those assumptions are correct, and continually improve that to make sure that they actually do experience, or that value proposition is experienced? So we use the lean startup methodology to do that. Before we do move on, if you do want some more information on the business model canvas, we actually held a meetup on it last year or the year before probably, that has like a full video that goes through it with examples. We'll just share for your own time. Yeah, cool. Okay, so so it's great to have, sorry.
Copy that over. Anyone like to check that out later? Can.
Cool, thanks. And okay, so it's great to have new ideas that are going to change the world, like we've just been discussing, but how can we validate them before we invest lots of resources into them? So this is where the lean startup comes in. Just a little bit on the lean startup. So I'll just go through the method itself, and so it's a feedback loop. Ultimately, what it's a process of validating different assumptions and ideas by going through. Oh, sorry, I see what you mean. Move my mouse. Is that what you're saying? Mm-hmm. By going through a process of ideation, building it out, whatever it might be, and testing it, and then learning from those insights about whether it worked or not. So that's the validation process. And so what that typically looks like, and so you can do that with the business model as well. So that's what we're talking about. So what that essentially looks like is, for example, you'll have an idea about a hypothesis that, and these can be both business and product. So you might have some of the ones here that we've got. So we might, using the sheet music, for example, we've made an assumption about our customers and what their proposition is. And so we go and build, we create some sheet music for them to use. And then they use that. And then how do we know if we've actually delivered on the value proposition or not? If we don't actually if we're not able to understand if the value proposition of being exciting and student-centered was realized by them using the product, then how do we know if we're on the right track or not? So this is what this model aims to solve. And I go much to go into depth on that. Just go to this next slide. I just want to see what's next. Yeah. Okay. So, and how you come up with these hypotheses to just provide a bit of structure to be able to do that. So, for example, using whether it be business or product, it could be specific features, testing features, it could be a whole business proposition idea, and you need to validate that. So everything from validating a concept might even just be through an MVP of doing some research to validate the thinking. That would be a hypothesis that could be tested. More kind of business critical, if you were like you could essentially run your whole business processes through this kind of framework. So all of your different business activities, even to the point of this webinar, for example. So we've made an assumption, or we have a hypothesis that if we run a webinar that provides value to our, some potential customers, then we may be able to expect to work with some of these businesses because we've provided enough value and showcased our capability to do so. So that's like a hypothesis that we have, that we're doing right now, to be honest. And this is the action that we're doing hopefully the outcome of that is everyone experiencing the value, and we will so just go back to that feedback loop, sorry. So we're building or delivering it, and then, for example, of the measurement side, you'll receive a link to a form after this to just using a basic Net Promoter Score of your likelihood of referring Digital Village to other people, or to have a bit of insight to your experience of this session. And then that allows us to see if we've delivered on our value or not. And then we can learn from that as to what do we do next? Did we totally screw it up? Or did we do well? And so it's a really important process, because it's a waste of time doing anything unless you know if it was helpful or not.
Particularly with early stage businesses who are developing new products, being able to put in a process like this to iterate is really crucial in terms of the success and development. You don't want to have any kind of set and forget ideas in your organization. And some easy ways you could actually do measure stuff. Do you touch on that?
Oh yeah.
Some easy ways you can actually measure things is going back to a point we mentioned before. One, obviously, is the output. So from this webinar perspective, if we submit a form, everyone responds. That's data shows itself however many people respond and reach out.
Right.
And the other way is, again, just talk to them, pick up the phone and go, hey, what do you think about our product? What do you think the improvements are? And that direct engagement, customers often like it, or sometimes you have to put an investment, like give them a $10 voucher for next time, or take a client out for a coffee, or buy them a beer, all that type of stuff. So there's lots of different ways you can obviously get that value out, but engaging with them and asking questions is one of the best ways to get that data loop. Otherwise, the other way you can do it is obviously you've got Google Analytics integrations, you've got and other data platforms to help you shape and make those decisions, etc. Yeah,
I mean, the data can come in any form, really.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah. It's just about how do you measure. You just need to be able to measure whatever you're doing, and then be able to be meaningful enough to be able to make a decision based on that data.
Which is actually a good point around the hypothesis should be something that can be measured as well.
Yeah.
Don't set hypotheses that are blanket statements or create too many variables, because that'll just cause confusion.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'd like to do is to apply this process. I'll leave it on that for now, and I'll just drag. We've got 20 minutes left.
Drive us back up.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we'll just go back, and so I want to apply how we might use the feedback loop with some of these assumptions of new business. Let's look at, so for example, we'll use these white tabs that was provided in the example earlier from another customer. And so their customer being the Young Entrepreneurs Social Ventures. and they're looking to create social ventures without expectation of return. And so how they were looking to provide that value to those social ventures was by creating a platform. So they've made an assumption that by creating this digital platform, they're going to be able to provide young entrepreneurs and social ventures with, I copied across the wrong thing. But yeah, with funding, without the expectation of return of that funding. So that's quite a good proposition, but how do they test that? And how do they know that a platform is actually the right way to do that? So how they might go about that is to come up with a hypothesis that defines that. If we build a digital platform, can we expect to see these businesses realize to receive funding and not have to return it? And yeah, so they could, so once they've got that proposition, they need to come up with a, because of the reasoning, whatever it might be. I can't remember what the reasoning was, but then they would go to create a minimal viable product. And so what were the core assumptions and propositions that they needed to, oh, okay, yeah, cool, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff.
The core assumption of proposition that they need to validate, and importantly, what is the fastest and most efficient way to make that learning before going and building a complex digital platform. And so what that looked like essentially was some prototypes and some feedback. So in that scenario, we built some prototypes of the interface of a platform, with the whole user experience of what might need to happen in order for those businesses to realize that and for investors to be able to do that. And we went and tested it with some of those target audiences, both investors and startups. And there was such learnings from that they were able to make some very important business decisions about where to go next.
Providing rapid growth, rapid adaptation of their product.
And it just, so then with those, and the outcome from that was being able to build or modify quite quickly what those designs or the experience were, and then take that into development. So you're not building, but you're not spending lots of money building technology that is not validated. Okay, so let's try another example. Let's look at the home gardeners and the organic fertilizer. So what might be your, it might be more clear in the chat, but if we provide organic fertilizer to home gardeners to begin with, we can expect, how might we test that essentially? And so what might the MVP look like for that? Is there something, maybe it's just literally, so maybe the MVP for that could just be simply something like having a small component and testing it with 5, gardeners who know a lot about it, and then do a survey of those gardeners to get some measurements or some feedback based on some specific metrics around what your value proposition is. And then that will determine what is working and what's not from your, and then, so you could do that quite quickly before going into mass distribution, which it looks like what you're already doing by starting there anyway.
Thanks, Carla.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
so
cool.
great. So Jeff, for example, you've already completed a set of university trials. So I'm assuming that
True.
You would have created a hypothesis around the needs of the organic material, the ability for it to impact even your product in itself. You've gone out to these universities or a group of people, said, hey, can you test this product? And then they've given you some quick feedback on the success and failures of it. And you've had to then iterate on it, unless you've got it, people do get things right first time, but you've iterated it from there. This is a great example. But the same thing can then also apply from a marketing and a strategy point of view, right? Yeah. So not only do you need to be iterating on a product, but whatever the branding you have put against your product needs to align with that. And you can do the same testing going, does what I'm saying about the product align with your, 10 to exactly. And it does take that long, 10 to 5 years, 10 years of 5 iterations, exactly right. But you put your product out there, put the messaging, test out with a couple of people. Does it align with the value and the expectation? Yes, no, no. What do I need to change? Ask them. Cool, this is what I expected. Great. Then you can start tailoring your messaging, tailoring the design and the look and feel of it, as well as the product itself. And all of the loop that comes back to your value proposition, it comes back to the product, it comes back to your strategies. Everything you do should have that lean sort of iterative test and learn approach to it.
That's it. And the key is that it's just a never-ending, continuously improving, iterative process of testing, building, learning, and then moving on. So exactly let's go to the next slide. So I want you just to ask yourself what hypothesis are you testing with your, so this is an example of an MVP of Amazon, and it's, it's nothing, it just highlights how, because what they've done well here is they've just specifically pointed out their value proposition at the top: 1 million titles, consistently low prices. And everything else on there it's obviously horrendous, but it managed to appeal to people enough that validate. So it might have taken them, 20 minutes to put that.
Sorry, go on. Say it.
20 minutes to build a basic website. They didn't try and build a platform right away. So that's the point. But just go next slide. So what's your hypothesis that you're testing with your business? And the key questions that I want you to think about when going through this, or when you get to the end of building your product and putting analytics in place to collect the data that you need to make decisions, at the end of that loop, you want to be asking yourself and the team, what did we learn from that iteration? How do we know that to be the case? And then what do we do now? And this is the core, for me. I feel like that's the core kind of takeaway. So do we have time to go through the next?
I'd make it quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Any questions quickly on the? We're going to do a bit of a Q&A at the end, but any quick questions on the lean feedback loop?
Good. I might race on with.
Yeah, we'll keep moving.
That was great, guys. Thank you. That was really helpful.
So you've taken, you've set up an idea of what your product is. You might have put some lean processes in. But the next step is probably even to think about, how do you optimize? What are the things that you need to be tailoring, and how can you even create those initial hypotheses and product ideas? So a real nice way to do that is by doing journey mapping, or customer journey mapping, ideally. And so there's a couple of journey maps out there in the world that you can actually utilize. Everything from the big old service design blueprint, which is pretty much encompasses the customer, the emotions, the feelings, the products, the tools, the technologies. You can then go into something more simpler, which is looking at your current state customer journey. So what is the customer experiencing right now? Your future state customer journey, what do you expect your customer to be experiencing? And then you've got a bunch of strategical and tactical and persona-based journey mappings. So I'm going to go with the current state one, because for now it's the simplest, and it gives a bit of cut through and helps get some ideas for you to kickstart some stuff right now. So I'll quickly skip over this. So this is a bit of an idea. And again, we've talked about Miro as a great tool. We're not salespeople for Miro. It's just a really good thing for idea generation, for mapping out stuff. But so this design is taken from Miro, which is a version of that current state customer view. So if I zoom in here, essentially what you want to do as your first step when building out this map is get an idea of the basic steps that your customer is going to go through and coming full circle to get to your North Star. So here we have the few simple states. We have awareness and discovery. So how does the customer going to find out who you are and where you are? The consideration. So how does the customer make a decision to use your product? The decision, when they actually convert. The purchase, so then what do they need to do to then make the purchase once they've gone through their decision? The engagement, so the stages of them utilizing your product or utilizing your services. And then obviously we want them to refer, we want them to share and experience and talk about your product afterwards. I'm just going to pan over back to the start here. So start with those actions, highlight, just top line, really basic, using Post-it notes. If you can put this up on a wall, if you've got a shared mirror board, just use the Post-it note functions here as well. So just literally write top line notes. What are the actions they want to do? And then take the next step down once you completed that. What are the touch points? So what are the specific engagements and functions and features do the customers expect to have at each one of those parts of the journey? And then you can start going into the more of the emotional drivers. And hopefully this part will be quite simple to start filling out, because you have already gone through the stages of defining who your segments are, defining your personas, understanding what their emotional drivers, what are their the pain points and gains, etc. So start having a think about and populating those for each one of the stages. And that allows you to decide, okay, if they have an expectation of doing this and it's quite painful for them in a normal situation, there's an opportunity for us to go, okay, how do we make this less painful? How do we make that expected experience when they're deciding to use the product a bit more enjoyable? And then go through the process of ownership. So you as an organization need to have an understanding of who inside your business is responsible for optimizing the experience or making the customer feel good about each one of those stages. And then from there, the exciting part is you're able to start creating opportunities. So you have an understanding of the actions and the touch points and how they feel, and you can start talking about, all right, so the customer needs to be doing this at this particular point. They're quite miserable right now. Our product may not even service that. So the opportunity for us is to take that emotion and take that action and implement it into our service. Or it could be that the customer is currently overjoyed with the experience within a particular phase, and your product is making things too complicated. So we actually need to simplify this process to align with the needs of the customer. And these opportunities can be everything from product design to product features to product marketing, depending on what you're trying to focus on at the particular time. Again, this comes back, these are really good for utilizing in workshop scenarios. I recommend having someone who is separate from the product itself facilitating something like this, but you can very much sit down with a small team and start populating it to get an idea of your overall customer journey and the opportunities that come out off the back of it. So given time, I won't touch much more on this. I could probably talk for days on each one and how to fill it in and processes, etc. But probably not going to be good value for time right now. To finish things up, the question that I get asked a lot with a lot of these, and actually it came up the other day when I was doing a client engagement, is how long does this all take? Like defining North Stars, going through the process of building out your business map, understanding what your value proposition is, defining each one of those personas, mapping out, designing it, thinking about product ideas, blah, 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 blah. They were like, if you go to big consultancies, and sure, they can take months. You could spend months developing this stuff, but you end up getting into a state where you're learning nothing and you're not going through a growth, and there's no growth opportunity when you spend all that time and money, particularly for small and even medium-sized businesses. That it's just wasted time and wasted money. But if you're trying to scale up really quickly, you don't have that time. You want to be moving fast. So these processes, you can actually do them if you dedicated a lot of time. You can do them in short sprints. A lot of this stuff that we just talked about, you could almost trial in 5 days. The design sprint is a great way of identifying opportunities and creating your MVP that you can then develop within a 5-day process. Other processes, if you need to extend that, can take 3 to 6 weeks. But the idea is you don't need to spend months defining all of this stuff. These are lean, startup methodologies that you can take into any size organization and implement straight away. And that is super important to understand, because you don't want to be wasting time. You want to grow fast. You want to get that opportunity. You want to get yourselves into the market as quickly as possible, because it's competitive out there. And we've seen the tech side of things. There's lots of different things.
It moves quickly, yeah.
It moves really fast. So
Chris, there's a question from Jeff. What is the difference between this and a mind map?
Yeah, sure. It's, good question, Jeff. So a mind map is more of an accumulation of ideas. So, I mean, a great example is kind of going back to when we were defining our value proposition, and you took all of those different ideas and you put them up onto a wall, and then you started to group them. And that process is that mind mapping, a mind mapping process where you're taking ideas, putting them up to a wall, and then identifying categories within it. And that's it's within the design thinking methodology.
The difference is probably in the divergent and convergent thinking.
That's actually a really much better way to explain it. Thank you.
Yeah. So like with design thinking in general, it's looking at ideation, because mind maps are kind of like connected to each other. Whereas design thinking looks at just anything, really broad thinking, and then narrowing it down through clusters, Tris was saying.
So even if we go back to this, I guess you could almost say within each one of these segments is a mind map in itself. When you're defining each one of those stages, you're going through that process of divergent thinking, defining each one of them, and then narrowing down into those opportunities. And I guess the idea of the journey is just bringing it all together in a visual way that creates opportunity. And you would utilize the mind map methodology or mind map approach in order to develop that. Cool.
Yeah, that's great.
I hope that answered your question, Jeff.
So that's kind of,
and that's us. So guys, does anyone have any other questions? Like that was a really good question. Thank you for that, Jeff.
If you have any questions, if you want to pop them in the chat box.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for questions to come in, I might just tell those that are still online a little bit more about Digital Village, because this has been really interesting and really helpful, Jason and Chris, and you guys have a lot of value to add to businesses. And Jason, we talked a while ago, you mentioned that Digital Village has 3 missions. So to provide sustainable and effective business solutions, to remove uncertainty of freelance, that's what I mentioned earlier. Very few of the businesses that we've worked with who are not still paying as much, if not more than they expected to pay, but not getting what they were expecting. And then your third is to provide new ways of working. So just by way of background, Digital Village has a network of around 500 people across all aspects of IT and business development. And what they will do if you reach out to them is they would connect you with the internal network contacts to help you progress your business in the way that you're looking to progress it from a tech point of view. Is that a good summary?
That's use this one. That's actually a really good summary. It might be old. Probably, yeah. So that is a really good summary, actually, Doreen. Thanks. So, it's about connecting people with the right partners. So, because often in old ways of working, there's, might be like an agency or something like that, or go to a freelancer or whatever it might be, the traditional ways of solving, building technology and so on. But it's limited because it's usually geared towards one type of solution. So one development shop might use a specific technology, and even if it's not the right solution, they'll suggest that because it's what they know. And that's really dangerous. So what we do is we have a person called, there's different people in the village that have different roles, and a core function of these different roles in the business is to curate the right people and solution for the business, because sometimes a business might need a CTO for a short period of time to help them with their technology direction and road mapping and selection and all that kind of stuff. And they might have a limited budget, so we can use some of our offshore partners to implement that solution. Or there might be, you know, a requirement to have things done completely offshore. So there's just different needs from different businesses at different points. And because Digital Village is technology agnostic and has such a vast range of capability, we're able to find really specialized solutions for you know, most businesses.
Right. Thanks, Jason.
Yeah.
You've got a question here from Al.
I'll just answer Jeff's one first. So he just asked something about this SWOT analysis, and then I'll ask Al's.
Yep.
So good question, right? Just around what is the SWOT analysis? So that being, it's like a quadrant approach to the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Always get that wrong. I did have to do a quick look at to validate it for myself. It's a really good analysis tool that helps to look internally around opportunities, improvements, and issues within your own organizations. We actually use it a lot for transformational style projects when engaging teams internally to have a discussion of where they find issues and where they find opportunities to grow. The thing that probably separates the SWOT analysis from other tools, particularly some of the stuff we spoke about, is the customer element. It doesn't focus a lot on the questions around customer and how the customer's engagement becomes relevant to it. But it's still a very powerful and relevant tool, particularly when looking at how you can improve the internal capabilities, functions, and even learnings from your own teams and others.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question. So yeah,
I don't know if it was a question actually.
So it's been fantastic, a lot to absorb. And we'll share a PDF.
Yeah. So
do you want to?
There's how are we going to do that?
What I can do, guys, is that everybody who's registered has submitted their email address.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you like, we can pull the email addresses and just email everybody directly with any follow-up attachments that might be helpful that you wanted to share.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, cool. That's great. We've yeah, cool. Also, just I've got a form here for some feedback. You know, you got to stick to that lean startup process in there. But just to get a bit of feedback on it, I just want to make sure that it was helpful or not for everybody. And yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much everyone for your time. I hope it was helpful. That you can see our emails there. If you ever want to reach out to us and ask any questions directly on stuff, please feel free to do so. And yeah, just sharing the sentiment with Jace, like feedback for us is king. So please share any insights and learnings for us. No feedback is bad feedback. We don't learn, we don't improve from that. So yeah, really appreciate it.
Sorry, you were right. That link is, so that there's another link here. If you want to share that other one, I got confused by looking at it. So there's a feedback one. And then if you want access to the templates, this link is the one you can go to.
We can also share that with you separately.
Yeah.
Dorian, and then we can send that out to you.
Yeah.
But
anyway,
there it is there if anyone would like it.
Right.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for organizing and kind of facilitating that, Dorian.
Thanks everybody for joining in.
Thanks for contributing, everyone.
Yeah, appreciate you putting time and effort into some of those statements. Like it's big to talk about your business and put it out and have people critique it. So we really appreciate you doing that, and I really hope you got some takeaways from it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks, Jason. Everybody, Jason and Chris are available. They've got their email addresses on the screen, or you can look up Digital Village. Also, if you're not familiar with the SRI, if you Google University of New England Smart Region Incubator, you can get a bit of information about the SRI and what that has to offer as well. Have a lovely afternoon and a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.